Be me, 25, sociology grad student at University of Michigan. Thesis focused on modern patriarchy and male privilege in workplace. Spend most of my time in feminist theory seminars and activist circles. Active member of Campus Feminist Coalition, organized protests and awareness campaigns. Social media presence dedicated to calling out sexism and inequality wherever I see it. My whole identity built around fighting for women's rights and dismantling oppressive systems. Been this way since sophomore year of undergrad when feminist theory clicked for me. Everything suddenly made sense. All the frustrations I'd felt growing up finally had framework. Why my brothers got more freedom than me. Why my dad expected mom to do all housework. Why I felt unsafe walking alone at night. Why I had to monitor my drink at parties. Why professors took male students more seriously. Why I had to work twice as hard for same recognition. All of it connected to patriarchy, to male privilege, to systematic oppression of women by men. Became passionate about educating others, about opening eyes to these realities. My friend group is all feminists. We reinforce each other's beliefs constantly. Share articles about gender wage gap, about male violence, about emotional labor women perform. Validate each other's experiences with sexism. Support each other through microaggressions. We're a tight community bound together by shared understanding of how world works. Then I meet someone who challenges everything, though I don't know it yet when we first talk. His name is Marcus. He's 27, works as nurse at local hospital in pediatric unit. We meet at coffee shop near campus, both reaching for last blueberry muffin at same time. He laughs and says I can have it. He'll get something else. No big deal. We start talking. Turns out he comes here every morning before his shift starts. He's friendly and easy to talk to. Asks about my grad program with genuine interest. When I tell him I'm studying feminist sociology, I brace for typical male response. The eye roll, the not all men, the defensive posturing, the dismissive comments. But he just nods and says, that sounds important. We definitely need more research on inequality. Caught off guard by his response. Find myself talking to him longer than planned. He tells me about his work, about caring for sick kids, about how emotionally demanding it is. Mentions he's one of only 3 male nurses in his unit. Often feels out of place. Says parents sometimes request female nurses instead. Assume he won't be as gentle or caring. I file this away as interesting, but don't think much of it. Just more proof of gender stereotypes. We exchange numbers, start texting occasionally, meet for coffee a few more times. He's becoming a friend, which surprises me because I don't usually connect with men this easily. Most men I know either hit on me or get defensive about feminism, but Marcus is different. He listens when I talk about my research, asks thoughtful questions, never tries to debate me. Couple months into friendship, I'm working on thesis chapter about male privilege in workplace. Arguing that men benefit from systematic advantages regardless of individual circumstances. That even well-meaning men profit from patriarchal structures whether they want to or not. Feel confident in this framework. It's supported by all my reading and research. Mention to Marcus over coffee that I'm working on this chapter. Expect him to just nod along. Instead, he's quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully like he's considering something. Can I ask you something? He finally says, voice careful like he's testing waters. Of course, what's up? I'm curious where this is going. Do you think all men have privilege in all situations? He asks, genuinely asking, not challenging. Well, yes, that's what systematic privilege means. I explain like I'm teaching introductory class. It's not about individual experiences. It's about overall structural advantages men have as class. He nods slowly, still thinking, still stirring that coffee like answers might appear in it. I guess I'm struggling with that, he admits, looking uncomfortable but honest. Struggling with what specifically? I'm in professor mode now, ready to educate. With the idea that I have privilege in my workplace, he says, meeting my eyes directly. When I'm constantly questioned, constantly having to prove I'm not a threat to children. When parents request different nurses because they don't trust men around their kids. When I make less than I would in other nursing specialties because pediatrics is seen as women's work. This stops me for a moment. Haven't really considered male nurses in my framework. But that's still patriarchy. I counter, back on familiar ground, society devalues care work. Because it's associated with women, so when men enter those fields, they're devalued too. So I'm being hurt by patriarchy, he asks, not argumentatively, genuinely trying to understand. Yes, exactly. Feeling like I'm getting through. Patriarchy hurts everyone, including men. But you said men have privilege from patriarchy, he points out. No malice, just confusion. How can I be privileged by a system that's actively making my work life harder? Open my mouth to respond with standard answer about how it's still net positive for men. But something about his genuine confusion, his real experience, makes me pause. I don't know. I finally admit, first time I've said those words about feminist theory in years. We sit in silence for a moment, both processing, both uncertain where to go from here. Can I tell you about my day yesterday? He asks, changing approach slightly. Sure, I'm curious now. Guard down a bit, actually wanting to hear rather than prepare counterargument. He tells me about being called to room where a 5-year-old girl needed for inserted. About how mom immediately said she wanted female nurse, didn't trust him alone with daughter. About how he had to get female colleague to stand in room as chaperone while he did his job. I'm not offended by the mom, he says, voice sad, not angry. I understand why she's cautious. But it hurts to be automatically seen as potential predator when I just want to help kids. To have my skills questioned not because I'm bad at my job, but because I'm male. He describes another situation from last week. Little boy with cancer asking why he became nurse. Kid's dad made comment about how nursing is for women, implying something wrong with Marcus. That dad probably has all the traditional male privilege you talk about. Marcus says thoughtfully, good job, makes good money, has authority in his workplace, never questioned for his gender. But I don't have any of that. I chose career that society devalues, that sees as feminine. So where's my privilege in that situation? What systematic advantage do I have there? Starting to feel uncomfortable, not because he's being aggressive, but because he has point. My framework says all men benefit from patriarchy, but sitting here looking at his experience, at his genuine struggle, at his professional devaluation, framework feels incomplete somehow. I think the difference is you could leave nursing, I try, grasping for theoretical grounding. You could go into a male-dominated field and immediately gain privilege. Women can't do that. Could I, though? He challenges gently, not meanly. I'm 27, have nursing degree and certification. Spent years training for this, have student loans, have career path I'm invested in. Sure, theoretically I could retrain for something else, but so could any woman. Theoretically, women could become engineers or CEOs, but there are barriers, right? Same barriers exist for me to leave nursing, financial barriers, time barriers, identity barriers. He's right, and I hate that he's right, because it complicates my clean theoretical framework. Plus, I love my job. He continues, passion evident in voice. I love caring for kids. I'm good at it. I make difference in their lives when they're most vulnerable. Why should I have to leave career I love just to access privilege I'm supposedly born with? We sit in heavy silence, my coffee getting cold, thesis chapter argument crumbling in my mind. I'm not trying to say women don't have it worse, he says after a long moment, voice gentle. I know they do in most situations. I see it at hospital. I believe your research. I just think maybe privilege is more complicated than we make it out to be. Maybe it's not that all men have all privilege in all situations all the time. Maybe it's more contextual, more nuanced, more individual than that. Everything in my academic training screams to reject this, to reassert systematic analysis, to explain why individual experiences don't negate overall patterns, why anecdotes aren't data. But sitting here with my friend who genuinely struggles, who faces real discrimination, Who chose caring profession and gets punished for it? My certainty wavers. Can I tell you something else? He asks, even more hesitant now, like approaching dangerous territory. This might sound offensive, but I promise I'm not trying to diminish women's experiences. I nod, curious despite my discomfort. Go ahead, I'm listening. Men die by suicide at 3 to 4 times the rate women do, he says quietly. We make up 70% of homeless population, 93% of workplace deaths, 80% of murder victims. We're falling behind in education at every level, more likely to drop out, less likely to go to college. We're more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to be victims of violent crime. We live shorter lives on average, have worse health outcomes for most major diseases. He's not rattling off statistics to win argument. His voice is pained, like this matters to him personally. And when we talk about these things, when we say we're struggling, we're told we're derailing, that we're centering ourselves in conversations that should be about women, that our problems are our own fault because patriarchy, because toxic masculinity. But if patriarchy gives us all this privilege, why are so many of us dying? My mind is racing. Want to respond with standard answers about how patriarchy hurts men too. About how toxic masculinity causes these problems, about how men created this system. But something about sitting here with Marcus, seeing his genuine pain, makes those answers feel hollow. I've never thought about it that way. I admit, feeling vulnerable in my uncertainty. Why not? He asks, not accusatory, genuinely curious. You study this stuff, you're smart. Why haven't you included men's issues in your analysis of gender inequality? Good question. Why don't I have a good answer for except that my field doesn't prioritize it? I guess because feminism is about women, I say weekly about addressing women's oppression. But why can't it be about both? He pushes back, still gentle but persistent. If the goal is equality, if the goal is dismantling harmful gender roles and expectations, then shouldn't we care about how those roles and expectations harm everyone? Shouldn't we acknowledge that rigid masculinity expectations kill men, while rigid femininity expectations limit women? He leans forward, engaged now, like he's been thinking about this for a long time. You study how women are pressured to be caregivers, to be emotional, to be nurturing. How that limits their career options, their autonomy, their full humanity, right? I nod. That's literally my thesis topic, my entire academic focus. But men are pressured to be stoic, to be providers, to never show weakness or ask for help. That limits our emotional development, our relationships, our ability to seek support when we need it. And when we can't meet those expectations, when we fail as providers or show vulnerability, we're seen as failures as men, worthless, disposable, which is why we kill ourselves at such high rates. Every word lands like physical blow because I can't deny the logic, can't dismiss the pain. So why is one a feminist issue worthy of academic study and social movement, while the other is dismissed as men's rights nonsense or misogyny or derailing? Why can't both be problems, both be worthy of compassion and solutions? I don't have answer, sit there feeling everything I built my identity on shifting beneath me. I had a friend, Marcus says, voice breaking slightly, switching to more personal ground. Met in nursing school, guy named Tyler, one of only 5 men in our cohort of 60 students. Smart, compassionate, wanted to be a pediatric nurse like me, wanted to care for kids. But constant comments about being male nurse, about whether he was gay, about whether it was weird. Family asked when he'd get a real job. Girlfriend left him because nursing wasn't masculine enough. Patients questioned his competence. Parents didn't want him treating their kids. Marcus stops, takes shaky breath. I can see he's fighting emotion. He killed himself our last year of school. Left note saying he couldn't handle feeling like failure. Failure as man for choosing caring profession. Failure as nurse for being male and female field. He fell through every crack. Couldn't talk about his struggles because men don't complain. Couldn't find support because men's issues aren't taken seriously. And when I try to talk about it, try to honor his memory by discussing these problems, I'm told I'm derailing, that I'm taking up space in feminist conversations, that men's problems are caused by other men, so women don't need to care. He's crying now, wiping his eyes angrily like he's ashamed of emotion. But Tyler was my friend. He was a good person, and system killed him just as surely as it limits women. So why don't we talk about that? Why isn't his death worth analyzing and addressing? I'm crying too now. Not theoretical tears, but real grief for a person I never met. For Marcus's pain, for Tyler's death, for all the suffering my framework didn't include. I'm so sorry. I say, meaning it, feeling it, I'm so sorry about Tyler. I'm sorry that happened to him. Sorry the system failed him. Sorry I've been blind to it. Marcus nods, composing himself, still gentle despite his pain, still not attacking me. I'm not telling you to stop caring about women, he says, voice steadier now. Keep doing your research, keep fighting for equality, keep calling out sexism and discrimination. But maybe expand your framework to include everyone who's hurt by rigid gender expectations. Maybe see men as individuals with different experiences, not monolithic privileged class. Maybe acknowledge that privilege is contextual, that power dynamics shift based on situation. He pauses, making sure I'm really hearing him, really understanding. That CEO in boardroom has massive male privilege, no question about it. But homeless veteran on street corner doesn't. Guy dying of suicide doesn't. I don't know my workplace. Tyler didn't in his life. So maybe instead of all men have privilege, we say privilege is complicated and contextual. That helps us see everyone's struggles without diminishing anyone's specific challenges. Everything he's saying makes sense, but it means admitting I've been wrong about fundamental things. That my research has blind spots, that my activism might have hurt people, that my certainty was false. This is really hard to hear. I admit, voice small, feeling my worldview cracking open. I know, he says, reaching across table to squeeze my hand briefly, reassuring, not romantic. I'm not trying to attack you, not trying to say your work doesn't matter. Just asking you to include more people in your circle of compassion, to see that fighting patriarchy means fighting for everyone's liberation from rigid gender roles, not just women's liberation from limitations while ignoring men's suffering under same system. We sit for a long time, both processing, both sitting with discomfort of honest conversation. What do I do now? I finally ask, feeling lost. How do I incorporate this into my work? How do I go back to my feminist groups and say, actually, I think we're missing something? Marcus smiles sadly, understanding my fear of being ostracized for questioning orthodoxy. Start by just being open, he suggests, by listening to individual stories without forcing them into a predetermined framework, by acknowledging that your theories might be incomplete, that reality is messier than categories, by caring about all suffering, not ranking whose pain matters more or who deserves compassion. Pause while he considers how to put complex idea into words. And maybe push back in your circles when someone dismisses men's issues as derailing. Maybe point out that equality means everyone's liberation, that feminism should include everyone. Maybe honor Tyler's memory by talking about how gender expectations kill men too. Leave coffee shop that day with head spinning, everything I thought I knew feeling uncertain. Spend next week's reading things I dismissed before, statistics about men's issues. Learning about male suicide rates, about custody discrimination, about boys falling behind in school, about homeless veterans, about workplace deaths, about men who are victims of violence. None of it erases women's struggles, but it complicates the simple narrative I'd been carrying. Start questioning things in my feminist group, gently at first, asking about men's issues. Get immediate pushback, told I'm centering men, told I'm betraying feminism. Told that men's problems are caused by patriarchy and toxic masculinity, so men should fix them. But that logic doesn't hold up anymore after talking with Marcus, after learning about Tyler. So we only care about problems when they affect women? I asked during one meeting. That doesn't sound like equality. That sounds like only caring about our own group. Get accused of being men's rights activist, of having internalized misogyny, of being traitor. Lose some friends who think I've betrayed the cause, who can't handle nuance or complexity. But some friends stay, some start having their own questions, their own doubts about rigid framework. We start having deeper conversations about what equality really means, about who deserves compassion. My thesis evolves, becomes more nuanced, includes analysis of how gender roles harm everyone. Advisor is skeptical at first, but ultimately appreciates more complex analysis of power dynamics. Keep meeting Marcus for coffee. Keep learning from his perspective and experiences. He introduces me to other male nurses, to men in caring professions who face discrimination, to single fathers who lost custody despite being good parents, to homeless men society ignores. Each conversation expands my understanding, makes me see gender issues as more complicated. Not men versus women, but everyone versus rigid roles that limit our full humanity. Couple months after that first honest conversation, Marcus texts me article about male suicide prevention. Asks if I'd be interested in helping create campus awareness campaign about men's mental health. My first instinct is fear. What will my feminist friends think? Will I be seen as betraying women? But then I think about Tyler, about all the men suffering in silence, about what equality really means. Say yes immediately. Start working on campaign that addresses men's issues without diminishing women's. Some feminists support it, see it as expanding gender equality work to include everyone. Others attack it, say it's derailing, say we're taking resources from women's issues. But we keep going, put up posters about male suicide, about asking for help being strength, not weakness, about how rigid masculinity expectations hurt everyone, about how all gender liberation is connected. Campaign reaches men who've been suffering silently, who finally feel seen and heard. Get messages from guys saying thank you, saying they felt alone until seeing campaign, saying they're getting help now, talking to therapists, reaching out to friends, choosing to live. That impact matters more than any criticism, more than maintaining ideological purity. Present day, finishing my thesis with completely different framework than I started with. No longer arguing that men have universal privilege regardless of context or circumstance. Instead, analyzing how rigid gender expectations harm everyone in different ways based on situation. How true equality means liberation for all people from limiting roles, not just women's advancement. Still feminist, still care deeply about women's rights and addressing sexism wherever it exists. But now see men as potential allies in dismantling patriarchy rather than monolithic oppressors. See their struggles as connected to women's struggles, both stemming from same rigid system. Marcus and I still meet for coffee regularly, still have long conversations about gender and equality. He's become one of my closest friends, someone who challenged me to grow beyond comfortable certainty, to embrace complexity and nuance, to care about all suffering rather than ranking whose matters more. You know what's funny? I tell him one morning over coffee, our usual spot at usual time. What's that? He asks, smiling because he knows I'm about to say something significant. That conversation we had months ago when you told me about Tyler and questioned my framework. I was so angry at first, felt like you were attacking everything I believed in and worked for. But it was the most important conversation I've ever had. It completely changed my perspective. He nods thoughtfully, stirring his coffee in that familiar way, considering his response. I was scared to say anything, he admits. Didn't want to lose you as friend. Didn't want you to think I was one of those guys who attacks feminism and dismisses women's struggles. But I couldn't keep pretending I agreed with everything when Tyler's death haunted me. When I saw how my male friends were suffering and no one cared because we're supposed to be privileged. Pause while he gathers his thoughts, emotional even now talking about it. I'm glad you listened. Glad you were open enough to question things rather than just dismissing me. That takes real courage and intellectual honesty that a lot of people don't have. We sit in comfortable silence, both reflecting on how much has changed, how much we've both grown. I still believe in fighting for women, I tell him, wanting him to understand this hasn't diminished my commitment. Still call out sexism, still work on women's issues, still think women face unique challenges. But now I see it as part of larger fight for everyone's liberation from rigid gender expectations. And I see men like you as essential allies in that fight, not obstacles to overcome. Marcus smiles, genuine and warm, the kind of smile that says he feels truly understood. That's all I wanted, he says simply, just to be seen as individual, as ally, as human being, not as representative of all men, not as automatically privileged regardless of context. Just as Marcus who's trying to do good work and struggling with challenges like everyone else. Think about my thesis waiting at home, about the academic arguments I'm making now, about how different it is from what I planned to write, from the certainty I started with, about how much better it is because it includes everyone, because it grapples with complexity. Thank you, I tell him, meaning it more than I've meant anything, for that honest conversation, for being willing to challenge me even when it was uncomfortable, even when you risked our friendship, for trusting me enough to share about Tyler, to be vulnerable about your own struggles. He reaches across table, squeezes my hand briefly like he did that first day, friendly and supportive. Thank you for listening, he responds, for being open to growth rather than defensive, for having courage to question things even when it meant losing some friends and facing criticism, for caring about Tyler even though you never met him, for honoring his memory through your work. We finish our coffees, get ready to start our days, him to hospital and me to campus. But everything feels different now, lighter somehow, more hopeful than it did before. My beliefs didn't just shift that day in coffee shop. They shattered completely and reformed into something better. Something more inclusive, more compassionate, more true to what equality really means. Not women against men or men against women, but all of us against systems that limit our humanity. TFW, you build entire identity on feminist theory and activism. TFW, you're certain you understand how power and privilege work in society. TFW friend challenges your framework with his own lived experience and pain. TFW, you realize your theories have blind spots that ignore real suffering. TFW, one honest conversation dismantles everything you thought you knew. TFW, you have to choose between comfortable certainty and uncomfortable growth. TFW, you learn that real equality means caring about everyone's liberation. TFW, you lose friends for questioning orthodoxy, but gain deeper understanding.